Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. In the last meeting, we have learned about the role of explicit instruction, that is defined as instruction that invites intentional learning of specific features of the second language. But in this chapter, I will explain about the role of implicit instruction. Alice define implicit instruction as instruction that caters to incidental acquisition and aims to attract rather than direct attention to form. Instruction aimed at facilitating incidental acquisition, for example, the picking up of linguistic features when learners are not making deliberate effort to learn them. The rationale for implicit instruction draws on a number of a theoretical constructs that we have considered in previous chapter. The first, it assumes that incidental acquisition is possible even by adults. Learners don't have to be taught what it is they are supposed to learn, but the instruction is designed so as to attract attention to the target form. And the second, it can be argued that incidental acquisition is the main way in which learners develop high levels of proficiency in a second language. So in other words, implicit instruction can help learners to acquire the kind of capacity needed to engage in communication. And this is the theoretical construct that informs implicit instruction. The first is focus on form, limited resources, and the last the cognition hypothesis. The key theoretical construct that informs implicit instruction is focus on form. This construct to explain how input and instruction provide opportunities for learners to attend to linguistic form while they are primarily focused on meaning. However, not all implicit instruction has been based on focus on form. Sehan in 1998 draws on his dual mode model as a basis for his own proposal for implicit instruction. This model is premised on the assumption that learners have limited processing capacity and usually experience difficulty in focusing on form and meaning at the same time, and thus will need to prioritize one or the other at different times by accessing either their rule-based system with or their exemplar-based system. Sehan distinguished three aspects of language production. The first one is complexity. The extent to which the learner produces more complex instruction using the rule-based system. And the second is accuracy, the extent to which the learner conforms to target language norm. And the last is fluency, the extent to which the learner can speak rapidly without undue pausing, repetition, or reformulation. Robinson in 2007 stated that cognition hypothesis constitutes a framework for classifying the relevant design and implementation variables that influence complexity, accuracy, and fluency. Robinson sees the essential trade-off as being between fluency and form, a task which is a complex in terms of resource directing variable will cause learners to make greater effort to control and monitor their production, thus affecting both accuracy and complexity. He argued that pedagogic tasks should be sequenced solely on the basis of increases in their cognitive complexity. There are two types of implicit instruction. The first one is memorizing sentences and meaning-centered instruction. Implicit instruction in language pedagogy is meaning-centered. It involves engaging learners in the comprehension and production of the second language for a communicative purpose. Two broad types of such instruction can be distinguished. The first of which is entirely meaning-focused. That is to say, there is no attempt to attract the learner's attention to form. For example, extensive reading. And the second type is also meaning-focused, but employs various instructional strategies to induce learners to attend to form. Although the instructional activities require primary attention to be paid to meaning, they also invite peripheral or periodic attention to linguistic form. One way in which this can occur is through enhanced input. The second way of inducing attention to form while learners are primarily engaged in communicating is through test-based language teaching. In the following section address how task has been investigated in second language acquisition. The investigation of task-based instruction in second language acquisition has addressed two basic questions. The first, what effect do task design and implementation variables have on the way a task is performed? And the second, what effect does the way in which a task is performed have on language acquisition? The first question concerned the relationship between the figure between A and B, and the second question addressed the relationship between B and C. In the next section, I will first examine studies based on input-based tasks and then those that have investigated output-based tasks. In an input-based task, learners are presented with second language input, oral or written, which they need to comprehend in order to achieve the outcome of the task. Just an input-based task doesn't require production on the part of the learner. Many of the input studies involve listen and do tasks. Alice Tanaka and Yamazaki in 1994, for example, used a kitchen task which required learners to listen to direction about where to place various objects in a matrix picture of kitchen. Output tasks require learner to speak or write. However, by and large, the researcher that has investigated output-based tasks has focused on oral production. Output-based tasks can be monologic or dialogic. Dialogic tasks requires learner to interact require information exchange and artificially of the information gap of or opinion gap kind. And then monologic and dialogic tasks differ in some fundamental ways. In the former, learners have to rely entirely on their own resources, while in the latter, they work collaboratively and can scaffold each other's production. At least considering design feature of tasks first in monologic tasks and then in dialogic tasks, then examination of number implementation variables that have attracted the attention of researchers such as pre-task planning. And this is design feature of tasks in monologic and dialogic. The research that has investigated monologic tasks has examined how the complexity of tasks affect complexity, accuracy, and fluency in learners' production. One of the study from Tofakoli and Foster in 2011. The results showed that the design of the task did indeed affect the production of both groups with the tight narrative structure promoting accuracy and the two storylines greater synthetic complexity. In the dialogic task, researchers have investigated the effect of design feature of dialogic tasks, and one of the studies from Keck et al. 2006. This meta-analysis indicates that task design does affect acquisition in ways that can be predicted on the basis of theories that inform the design of tasks. A task-based lesson can consist of pre-task space, the main task space when learners perform the task, and a post-task space. But the concern here is only with those implementation variables that impact on how the task is performed. That is, those associated with pre-task and main task space. In a pre-task implementation variable, pre-task planning and rehearsal do result in greater fluency and complexity, as Sehan predict, but in some studies they also lead to greater accuracy which his model don't predict. In the majority of the studies, pre-task planning affect either complexity or accuracy but not both. For main task implementation variable, Foster and Sehan in 2013 hypothesis that knowing this would induce learner to avoid error and thus enhance accuracy when they perform the task. In fact, the result of the study showed that this requirement had a general effect on for example on both complexity and accuracy. Few studies have taken this broader approach to comparing explicit and implicit instruction. One that has done so is Sintani's study of young beginner learners of English. And this is the summary of the study. The study compared the relative effect of implicit instruction consisting of input-based tasks and explicit instruction consisting of PPP on the acquisition of a set of new words. The result indicated that both types of instruction were effective, but that overall implicit instruction was superior. And the study also reported that the implicit instruction resulted in a superior incidental acquisition of a grammatical feature, like plural s. And this feature was not explicitly explicitly taught in either the task-based instruction or in the PPP. Nonetheless, the study also undertook a microgenetic analysis of the interaction that occurred in the two types of instruction to examine how affordance for the use of target items, both lexical and grammatical, arose. It shows how opportunities for learners to initiate discourse and to negotiate for both meaning and form were common in the input-based lesson, and how in contrast the explicit instruction largely constrains learners' contribution to responding in initiate, respond, follow, initiate, respond, follow up exchanges. Okay, that's all my explanation about the role of implicit instruction. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.